god. Oh my god, I got his brains in my mouth! Water, give me water!
Dear God. Welcome to 2020. Obviously the new year began a few days ago, but this is my first video back, and what better way to start off the year by discussing the chaotic year that was 2019 in gaming, and how Bethesda as publisher and developer simply collapsed, sinking to lows that I've become accustomed to from the likes of Electronic Arts and Activision Blizzard. Bethesda truly defied the odds, and honestly I just have to wonder how 2020 will turn out. Now, funny enough, this video was actually planned to be made in early December, but that didn't really work out because, you know, Fallout 76 imploded a few more times. So anyway, made a little more sense to wait this video out until now, and looking back at the entirety of 2019, I just have to say we're living in a strange timeline where Electronic Arts had a brighter year than Bethesda. Even saying that kinda hurts, but really, if you had told me about 7 years ago that this publisher would fall so far down, I wouldn't be able to believe you, because there was a long period of time between the release of Skyrim up to the reveal of Fallout 4 where so many people were obsessed with Bethesda game studios, speculating and getting excited for the future ahead. One of those people was me, and the added bonus was Bethesda's publishing arm consistently delivered amazing, almost always underrated single-player games, up until last year where even that disappointed. Like I said, we're living in a strange timeline. The obsession and love of Bethesda game studios has faded away. If anything, it feels like the new hotshot which now gets the obsession and love is CD Projekt Red, which I would argue did revolutionary things with my personal game of this generation, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. So we do have a lot to discuss, but before we proceed, as usual, if you do go on to enjoy this content and want to show your support for gaming coverage like this, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing for more, and turning notifications on so you do not miss out on any new videos. Nonetheless, I have to be very cautious with complimenting Electronic Arts, because in 2019 it still was a gigantic train wreck. It's just that for once, someone outdid them with downright stupid, greedy, lazy, and incompetent decision making. Although it should be mentioned that this AAA gaming industry is pretty much known for all of what I just said. But the difference is most of these companies, the Konamis, Ubisoft, 2K Games, and so on and so forth, at least have the decency of shutting up for a while after a gigantic screw up or a PR blunder. Electronic Arts, though, it's a miracle if something dumb doesn't happen from that one company, and I would say the span of a month. But most definitely, Bethesda went out of their way to replicate that model throughout 2019, which I mean it made at times some fun content, although by the end of the year I really began to question if this was all just intentional. It just really is hard to believe that a company that did gamers right for so long would throw all of that goodwill away in the span of around 1 year. Electronic Arts, though, let's be honest, even though 10 years ago they delivered some remarkable games from Mass Effect to Dead Space, they've always been the big joke of this gaming industry, and that's because of their horrible, at times laughable actions that, as I mentioned earlier, happen so frequent. Anyway, credit where credit is due. At the very least, Electronic Arts had a few moments of doing gamers right last year. That includes the surprise launch of the free-to-play battle royale game Apex Legends, which you could argue was the big reason why EA was so successful last year financially. Apex Legends was something that many fell in love with. Obviously, the early claims of it being the Fortnite killer were overblown, but still it has been a massive success for Respawn Entertainment and EA. Although, like with almost all EA live services, it has run into some issues and controversy. Of course, to do with monetization, because again, this is EA we're talking about, and they will always try to create an opportunity to make more money, even if it is an anti-consumer decision that will garner a heated reaction from gamers. Speaking of controversy, as I mentioned multiple times last year, Star Wars Battlefront 2 is actually not that bad anymore. I'd actually argue it's a pretty solid multiplayer experience that tragically will always be remembered for the loot box debacle that occurred in late 2017, which that really is a shame because DICE really have done a great job at improving and listening, but as they say, too little too late, and first impressions really do matter, especially in this AAA gaming gaming industry. Another game impacted by controversy that resulted in lower than expected sales is Battlefield 5, which had a moment in 2019, one moment, with the introduction of the Pacific Theater, but unfortunately outside of that, just a lot of bad decisions throughout 2019, which really ruined the potential for this game. Whether that be terrible communication, time to kill changes nobody asked for, failed promises, cancelled content, and a failure of a battle royale mode that, again, nobody asked for. Battlefield 5 is a game that many have moved on from for a reason, but really the highlight in my opinion for Electronic Arts in 2019 was Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which is the first solid Star Wars game in years, and even having to say that feels kinda depressing, but Respawn delivered, once again with a decent little experience, which wasn't very original in design at all, but it had heart and included some fun new characters that we'll likely see again in the future. Again, I should preface that it took over 6 years since EA signed an exclusivity deal with Disney to finally produce one good, non-controversial Star Wars game, which is just sad, but I guess one is better than none, I guess. Now, to Bethesda, gotta give credit where credit is due, and in 2019, Bethesda did gamers right with there really is nothing to think of. There's nothing. Honestly, it's just hard, it's difficult to think of anything at all that they did right. Everything they did seemed to result in a disastrous result. At the very least, EA had some bright moments, but Bethesda just had nada, nothing. I can't even give them credit for arguably the star of E3 2019 with Akumi Nakamura, hopefully I said that right, who appeared on their E3 stage to announce the next game from Tango Gameworks, in which she serves as creative director, or I should say served, because a number of weeks after this event, Nakamura left Bethesda suddenly, and rumors began to emerge that Bethesda had cancelled the game that she was working on, Ghostwire Tokyo, which, as I said before, 2019, total complete disaster in every single aspect. So yeah, that really is the one positive thing I can think of, but let's carry on to the negatives because there were many, and we'll start with the elephant in the room, and that obviously is Bethesda's Fallout 76, which I don't really think we have the time to sit here and list off each and every screw up. There simply put was too many, from hackers terrorizing servers by creating tools that allowed them to steal entire player inventories, which led to these hackers making giant real-world profits by selling stolen goods on places like eBay, to a secret developer room being found which included every item in the game, and for weeks cheaters had been accessing the room and stealing the items, to Bethesda delivering broken patches which resulted in the reintroduction of previously solved bugs, to a stupid subscription service that paywalled gameplay features that the community had been asking for months, to Bethesda forcing cheaters to write an essay to them on why the use of third-party cheat software is detrimental to an online game, to Bethesda trying to sell a Fallout 76 jacket for $276 which came with a nylon bag, to a law firm threatening legal action over shady practices, to Todd Howard on multiple occasions labeling Fallout 76 a massive success with millions of players, to the cosmetic-only promise made before release being broken multiple times, to developers consistently lying, making excuses, and ignoring the community, to just a lot more. And what's most sad is that I'm barely scratching the surface, with all the chaos that surrounded this pathetic live service in 2019. Now, beyond Fallout 76, there still was a lot of other problems that occurred, whether that be the lies and chaos that surrounded the mobile Elder Scrolls Blades, which, like Fallout 76, featured Bethesda Game Studios being extremely greedy and making clear that this totally pure Elder Scrolls experience, as Todd Howard described it, did not exist to excite fans of this franchise, but instead was intended to milk the wallets of casual mobile whales. For about 8 months, Bethesda included a loot box system that featured timers, and the only way to avoid the timers was by paying up. This predatory monetization was something Bethesda claimed that they didn't want to do, but yet they did it anyway. Rage 2 was a game published by Bethesda and developed by id Software and Avalanche Games, and while it had exciting marketing before release, at launch, nobody at all cared for it. It was yet another sales failure for this publisher, and those who actually did buy the game were mostly unimpressed, resulting in average to mixed reviews. Now, to arguably the worst game released in 2019, we have Bethesda devs Arcane and Machine Games' Frankenstein, that is Wolfenstein Young Blood. which I don't even want to talk about this game. I hate it just so much. It's just god-awful. Whoever thought to try and turn this franchise into a pathetic looter shooter should be fired. Everything about this game is just bad. The dialogue, the story, the characters, the bullet sponge enemies, a massive mistake which could be a franchise killer, even if it was intended to be a little spin-off. But like Rage 2, this Wolfenstein game also was an apparent big sales failure, which maybe in this case it wasn't all that surprising, as there was barely any marketing done, which indicated that Bethesda didn't even have faith in this mess of a game, although they certainly did try to monetize the game further with some pathetic macrotransactions, and it appears it could have been a lot worse. I say that because, based on some developer comments made before release that Bethesda tried downplaying, and the PlayStation 4 version accidentally for a period of time including the option to purchase gameplay affecting boosters, it was clear that Bethesda originally had designed and planned a lazy monetization scheme for a lazy disgrace of a game, which is actually quite fitting. Now, probably something more hated and probably unknown is Wolfenstein Cyberpilot, a VR game that was released in 2019, the day before Young Blood actually, and the overall opinion on this VR game from the few that actually even cared to check it out is that it's more comparable to a glorified tech demo, which is pretty poor in quality. But this is the story of Bethesda in 2019, in which everything just sucked. Don't get me wrong, Electronic Arts definitely had a boatload of moments of sucking in 2019. If you don't recall, the highlights include EA's pathetic executives that tried to defend their slot machine loot boxes from regulation in the United Kingdom, arguing that loot boxes are referred to as surprise mechanics at EA, and they are actually comparable to Kinder Eggs, and everyone apparently loves them. Thankfully, as the public and governments become more knowledgeable on the gaming industry's predatory monetization mechanics, it makes the arguments used by companies like EA look pretty darn stupid. But another highlight includes BioWare's big stinker that is Anthem, which for a while seemed like it was going to be the next Fallout 76, although as 2019 proceeded, Fallout 76 easily regained the domination of news headlines for all the wrong reasons, and BioWare went silent. Veteran staff abandoned ship, and reportedly the Austin studio quietly began working on an Anthem overhaul and relaunch of sorts coming for this year. But for a large part of 2019, Anthem was the big disaster, a buggy, broken, meh looter shooter that only got worse once Kotaku exposed all of the behind-the-scenes chaos and drama that happened during the game's 7-year development. Look, what happened in 2019 with Bethesda was unprecedented levels of dumb, greedy decision-making by leadership that either don't care anymore or just don't know what they are doing. Years ago, many considered Bethesda as the bright side of this troubled AAA gaming industry, but now Bethesda has transformed into something equivalent to that of Electronic Arts and the Chinese government-loving Activision Blizzard. Obviously, if 2020 is anything like 2019 with Bethesda, we could probably have a good discussion on how this once-beloved publisher has become the worst company in this AAA industry. But for now, I remain hopeful that we don't see a year like 2019 again. With that said, I still do not believe we're going to see drastic change this year. Doom Eternal is a few months away, and for the most part, id Software's sequel to 2016's surprise hit looks thus far impressive, which hopefully indicates at least one positive coming from this publisher. Outside of that, maybe we see Starfield, the next Bethesda Game Studios title, get released, although that may be a little too soon. But what is certain is that Fallout 76 is still going to be a thing, and the big Wastelanders update is near, which will add human NPCs to the game. Based on how this live service has been running for the last year and a few months, I think it's safe to assume that something is going to go wrong. So if anything this year, hopefully there is at least one positive thing that will come to mind with Bethesda. That's pretty much what I expect from the EAs and Activision Blizzards every single year. Like already, EA has done something smart, which is having Respawn Entertainment head Vince Zampella take over DICE LA, which out of all of the EA-owned developers, Respawn has been really the one bright spot, and building off of that is a wise decision. But it should be noted that I fully expect a lot more stupidity coming from this publisher in 2020, largely because it's kinda in their nature. And I mean, last year it was announced that FIFA boss David Rudder was being promoted. Rudder is credited as one of the individuals who helped create the ultimate team mode for FIFA that we all know and hate. Rudder, though, is now general manager over franchises that include Battlefield, Star Wars Battlefront, and Need for Speed, which my reaction has not at all changed since hearing of this this news back in September. It's really a ticking time bomb. One just has to wonder if EA is preparing to once again try to spread the infection that is Ultimate Team into other non-sports games. What could possibly go wrong with that? Anyway, 2020 will again be an interesting year for gaming, but for Bethesda, the collapse in 2019 was very real. While some expect that they will rise from the ashes with the release of Starfield, I don't feel the same optimism anymore, especially considering the key talent that continues to depart and the evidence that continues to mount of all Bethesda-owned studios now focusing on monetization and creating live services first. Bethesda has changed. Obviously, there are many theories out there for why they changed, but what's clear is that more than ever they are focused on money over everything, which is a shame because in the last decade this publisher has released some of my favorite games ever. Like 2017 Prey was an unforgettable experience that really blew me away with its music, story, design, and Bioshock-like style. It's just unfortunate that it did not sell. Regardless, 2019 was filled with controversy, delays, and consistent chaos, which I have to believe it cannot get much worse than that, but time will certainly tell. Bethesda certainly knows how to blow up expectations. Anyway, what do you make of Bethesda's 2019 and what do you envision moving forward? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so do make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games, and again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.